Blech. The Ruins, directed by Carter Smith. Synopsis: terror has evolved. Americans Amy, Stacy, Jeff, and Eric look for fun during a sunny holiday in Mexico, but they get much more than that after they visit an archaeological dig in the jungle. So this is based on a book, and I remember seeing this the first time. I remember being blown away by this movie. I was like, wow. Like, first of all, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot, in the way that like horror is a vehicle for social commentary, there's a lot happening in here, and it's all wrapped up in like a mid 2000s horror film, and it has that feel like the cast, like everybody's like a beautiful model, they don't feel like actual people. They feel like, I don't know, which is kind of annoying. Takes away from the realism of it. It just has that 2000 sheen on it in that kind of way. But basically, 4 Americans, they go to an unmarked Mayan pyramid in the jungle. The indigenous locals, who are descendants of the Mayans, do not speak Spanish and are trying to tell them to stay away from this pyramid. There's nothing that grows around the pyramid because the indigenous locals, they salt the ground so that nothing can grow, and it's basically like a barrier that protects the world from an invasive plant. So you have a lot of different levels of invasivity, right? You have, a bunch of rich white Americans going to South America to, insensitively, trample around in, ancient indigenous ruins, right? You have that level. Then you have the level of like invasive plants and why, or invasive species, and how ecological disaster can wreak havoc, and why things need to be protected. And, miscommunication, misunderstanding. The Americans, they like don't understand why it is that they're being quarantined and don't realize that they're being quarantined. And I'll tell you, that moment when the dude touches the plant, they just walk through the plants and the locals start freaking the fuck out. It's great. It's really terrifying because you as the audience, maybe if you've seen the movie before, you're tapped in, but not the first time. So the first time you might be confused, but the second time you're going, oh my God, how scary is that? Like, they just don't realize that they're literally canceling their own lives by where they step, simply because they do not know the situation, because there's a language miscommunication. They can't understand each other. And then they find themselves isolated on the pyramid, and it's kind of like a slow reveal that there's malevolence in these plants. And here's what it really reminded me of watching it this time. I'm watching this movie and I'm going, holy shit, this is like the perfect combination of 2 Creepshow shorts. Okay, 2 segments from Creepshow. In the original Creepshow, the one that stars Stephen King, where he gets the moss that grows on him. Very simple premise, right? And The Raft from Creepshow 2. So this movie is the death of Geordie whatever in Creepshow and The Raft combined together. And when you think about that as like, that's what I'm pitching to you in like a boardroom, of course you're going to greenlight it. Why didn't this movie franchise out? I don't know. There's so many. I felt like you could have gone back to that pyramid a few times and done some interesting things. The plants there's a terrifying moment where you realize that the plants are able to mimic sound, and because they think they hear a cell phone ringing, and it's used to lure them in because the plant is carnivorous. It's like dissolves people. It's a really grisly movie. It's also a survival movie too. And one thing that I would have liked a little bit more of, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more person on person interconflict. Like, you have a lot of different conflicts happen. You have man versus nature, people versus nature. You have people versus people, in terms of, you have the indigenous locals who are quarantining these Americans because they're idiots and they step foot where they shouldn't have stepped. And then on the third, you have on a third level, you have 2 different levels of the survival aspect. You have survival in the elements, but then you also have survival against this monstrous plant. And then I would have liked to seen they did this in The Descent. In fact, The Descent would be the perfect sort of double feature for The Descent would have been the perfect double feature with this movie. By the way, Ruins looks really fun. It's really fun. I highly stop what you're doing, go watch this movie immediately. You will be thoroughly entertained by it. You will really enjoy it. So check that out. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more conflict between the Americans, right? Like you could have done a little bit more. Eventually someone gets injured. What's interesting, the character Jeff, who turns out to be kind of the protagonist, is Jeff. Who he's in a bunch of movies. Jonathan Tucker is his name. He's in a bunch of movies. So is Shawn Ashmore. Shawn Ashmore he plays Iceman. He was hot for a minute. He plays Iceman in the X-Men movies. He's in Frozen, the Adam Green film. What else is he? Yeah, he's in 4 X-Men movies. He's in Frozen. He was Lamplighter in The Boys on Amazon Prime. He's in Mother's Day, Culture Shock. So he's in a bunch of stuff. A lot of genre stuff he's in, but his career's kind of set, kind of waned. But he's in this movie, does a perfunctory job at what he's, what he's doing and stuff. So it's interesting though, like Jeff's character comes through. What's another thing? I would have liked the characters to have been a little bit more developed, So I wanted a little bit more character development. We only get it from Jeff. We learned that he is a medical student and he ends up becoming the leader and kind of telling everybody what to do. And what's interesting, he keeps wanting to do all these like medical procedures. Like he wants to perform an amputation. He wants to perform surgery to remove a plant. And it's kind of like, I kind of wish there was a little bit more conflict in terms of like, dude, like you think what's best because you're a doctor, but like it's ultimately it's not helpful. Like it's not helpful. Like everything that he does medically doesn't help anybody. He wants them to move. He wants the guy who breaks his back. They want to move him, like lift him out of the pyramid or whatever. That's not good. That wasn't a good idea. I mean, they were doomed anyway, but that wasn't a good idea. Then he amputates the guy's legs. That wasn't a good idea. And then he's surgically removing vines when they don't have any, like they just have liquor for sterilization. It still could get infected. You could still die from infection if you weren't going to die from being exposed to the elements or getting eaten by plants, man-eating plants and whatnot. But ultimately he kind of comes off as the hero in the movie, which is interesting. Yeah, I wanted to see everybody kind of fight more or turn against each other. You could have had some allegiance change. You could have had people fighting for leadership over the group. There was a lot of places that they could have gone and that they didn't end up going. So I don't know. That's okay. It's neither here nor there. Now here's one thing that I had forgotten. As I'm watching the ending and I'm expecting the ending to end one way, and only to realize that the ending I was looking for is actually in the deleted scene. Spoiler. And the theatrical ending, or maybe it's the unrated ending, I got to tell you, I was so bummed to watch what the theatrical ending was. One of the girls, she just gets away. Amy gets away, right? Like she gets away, and that's the end of the movie. And I'm like, dude, you're infected with a fucking man-eating plant, or you've been here's the thing that's interesting about the idea of touching. The moment somebody touches these plants, they're doomed. And that's how the Mayan, the indigenous Mayan locals treat. I don't know if it's right to call them Mayans. They're descendants of the Mayans. That's how they treat anybody. So even when Amy throws up the plant at a little boy, because the thing is, the locals, they surround the area to make sure that they don't leave. They don't want them to leave. They have to die. They don't want to kill them, but they basically can't leave. They have to make sure that this plant doesn't get off that Mayan pyramid, and Jeff even notes, he's like, even the birds and the animals know not to go near here for that reason, where was I going with that? Oh, there's like this, the kid gets touched with a plant. They kill the kid. That just to show, I mean, it's dark, but it's like, that's what's so great about that is that they're establishing how infectious and how dangerous the plant is. So for her to escape at the end and get away in a Jeep and not tell us what happens to her later on is bullshit. And they did that because the ending tested poorly in America or whatever. They shot a bunch of alternate endings. Alternate endings in horror movies were so fucking hot in the 2000s. Everybody loved doing it. It was the rage. And so when I watched the DVD at the time when I had rented this movie, one of the alternate endings, which was chef's kiss, which is how I remembered it ending, is that Amy gets away and then it cuts to America and it's a cemetery. And we hear the plant that we see the plant is growing out of a grave of Amy. So Amy dies. She's born in 86. So she's roughly my age. I'm born in 85. She's 20 years old when she dies. The movie happens in 2000. It's 2006, but the movie came out in 2008. And the grave digger gets attacked by the plant. I'm like, oh my God, that's the ending. And then the plant obviously takes over America, that's the ending. Like that, what an ending, So it's like we see her get away and then you smash cut. She's dead. She didn't survive. So they were always doomed. You know what I mean? I think the Mayan, indigenous Mayan locals, they knew that, which is why they took such precautions. Like they're treated as an antagonistic threat. But the reality is they're like, you're a fucking idiot for stepping here. And now we have to quarantine you to save the world. They're tasked with this responsibility. And yeah, Amy says Ruins is a good vacation horror, just like The Descent. It really is. So it's the perfect double feature, The Descent and Ruins. Watch them back to back. The Descent by Neil Marshall is a masterpiece of the 2000s, masterpiece horror film. And it got a sequel, a lesser sequel. Sam Turvo says the movie sounds good, unrelated, but The Ruins is also the name of an amazing Japanese avant-garde genre blending rock band, similar to Naked City and Mr. Bungle. Okay, I am going to check out The Ruins. Minister of Darkness concurs and says the band is awesome. I will check that out. He says, I love their album on John Zorn's record label, Symphonica from 1998. All right. Thank you for the recommendation. I will definitely look into it.